So how do we want to start this? Because normally Garrett and I, like, it just carries on over from like whatever we were talking about. We just kind of carry it over into the recording.
Video games.
Oh, video games. Hear me out.
Okay.
Video games. Thank you, thank you.
Brilliant.
I'm here.
Brilliant.
Just my expertise is just gifting you guys.
Welcome to Big Tech Guys. I'm doing it this time.
Oh, a switch
Yes,
up.
I am. So I'm Garrett. Got other host John.
Hello.
Special guest Matthew.
I might say I'm kind of a big tech guy myself.
No, we're sending you back to the gulag. Only Garrett and I can be big tech guys.
Right. Yeah. You're out here. You know, I'm something of a big tech guy myself. But here we are. Date of recording is April 3rd, 2020. We're
The year of
actually
our
not
Lord.
doing it at midnight this time, guys.
We're
So
not. We're doing it at a respectable
is-
business hour.
Still nighttime, but not as stupid late. So improvement.
We just survived the month of March.
Right.
It was the
Coronavirus
longest
panic.
month of our lives, and April's just starting. So
Yep. It's only getting worse, fellas. And not only that, speaking of the coronavirus, shameless plug, we actually did our last video on coronavirus and the effects on society. So you should probably go watch this one if you haven't watched this, or if you're watching this one now and you haven't seen that one. So go watch the other podcast.
Easy plug.
Do it. Maybe.
I'm gonna leave this and go listen to that. So I'll see you guys.
Yeah. Goodbye. Actually, now it's me and John talking about esports. Maybe we should actually start talking about it.
Absolutely, and that's where I'll pick up the microphone from here. So, the topic for today really is, well, I guess we should start off with just, like, it starts at a very broad level of just video games. Because the industry that we want to talk about, the esports industry, wouldn't have been possible without the rise of lots of competitive games, namely being games like League of Legends, like Counter-Strike, like Overwatch, Rocket League, you name it. If a game is considered competitive, a lot of people would argue that it could be considered an esport. Just like going into this with a bit of a broader term, I was just wondering what video game y'all really spent like a lot of time in, like, because I remember playing games like off and on, but I guess I never really like put a lot of time into a video game until I was in like 5th or 6th grade. Probably I guess it was Minecraft that I really spent like a ton of my time in.
In like one game.
Yeah, just like putting like there's a difference between, I think, like putting in a couple hours into a game, like, oh, like I have like there's a difference between playing a game and like really like playing a game, like grinding it out almost, like trying to get better, like trying to improve your skill, trying to learn more about what the game has to offer. So I guess since we don't really do a lot of like asking and answering questions like this, I just figured I'd ask y'all what the first like video game you really like you really remember spending like a lot of your time in.
Are we talking like esport kind of things, or just video games? You know, like.
I think we should do esports only because
Okay.
it's more relevant. I don't know. But I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, if you want to talk about the first just game in general, feel free to do that.
No. Well, first game, Final Fantasy IV. If you haven't played it, you
Respectable.
should play it. It's amazing. But I'd say first esport-esque game would definitely be Super Smash Bros. I mean, everyone has played it at its basic level, but it goes so much deeper than just button mashing and 4 free-for-alls, like 4-player free-for-alls. So definitely probably in 8th grade, I really started digging into that, and truthfully still am. So, but yeah, probably Smash Bros.
First video game that I spent a lot of time in that isn't esports, Super Mario Galaxy. Shout out to you. We like that 242 star run with the grand finale Galaxy. Only the real ones know that
Let's
run.
go.
The first competitive game I really spent a lot of time in, probably like a lot of time, would most likely be, I guess, CS:GO. Because I really got into that game around 9th grade. Before then, I had played some different games a lot. Probably like at really a lot of different levels, but nothing was really a competitive game. No ranked mode, nothing that was just a competitive esport. And CS:GO is the first one I really got into. It was really strange for me, at least at the time, but I got really into it. Here we are. Still play CS:GO here and there, but I've moved from different stuff over the years. But that was the first like esport I really got into and actually wanted to like get better. I would actually, practice the game like in practice ranges and stuff. Aimbot Z.
I think I'm along that similar strain because I guess like I wasn't allowed to own COD games when I was growing up. I didn't even have a Halo game until I was like nearing the end of the Xbox 360 cycle.
Neither did I.
So I guess for me, like around the time that the 360 was ending its cycle and like beginning of the Xbox One was when I started, like I made my Steam account and I started playing games. And I remember playing, I guess the same, I was playing Counter-Strike with Garrett and Nate. I'm still not great at it. I'm still the same rank as I was when I stopped grinding every day. I'm still the lowest rank in the game. But I remember like there was something about CS:GO that was different to really any other video game I had played. Because normally like when you play like Super Mario Galaxy or Mario Kart, games like that, like you can pop on for a little bit, but there's no inherent motivation to get better. But the competitiveness and the ranked ladder that existed in CS:GO gave me so much motivation to get better at it. Even if I really didn't, like I still am the worst in the game. There was something about like coming home after school every day and like sitting down at my desk and like opening up my MacBook and like booting into a competitive game and like treating it like it was like a regular pickup like soccer game or a pickup basketball game, like putting effort and like learning about the game and how the economy flows and how weapons work and all that kind of stuff. It just kind of, I guess that was like when I got like opened up to the esports world too, was like watching like Team Liquid and watching all of the best teams perform so that I could learn how to get better. And just really like CS:GO was just the rabbit hole that sent me spiraling into like the esports world, I guess. I now follow like Siege and League of Legends. I grind Rocket League every now and then.
Every other
Every now
day.
and then. Every
When I
day.
feel like it. Yeah. All
Couple
the time.
hours.
But
when I
I
wake
think
up.
a really important distinction or a thing to note, I guess, like the important distinction between like esport games and like say something like you mentioned, like Super Mario Galaxy or Mario Kart. Those games, like there is like the thing with those two games and like really just a lot of games in general that aren't really considered esports is that they have a skill cap, and it's like you can get good at the games, but you can't like there's not a lot of room to move around and create your own style. You know what I'm saying? Games like CS:GO and League and Overwatch and Siege, all of those competitive esports, what they do is they have there isn't really a skill cap. You can make the game like you can play as good as really you can in that sense.
What's really cool that I found in esports is like just like in a normal sport. If I'm watching soccer, I can tell the difference between Messi
Yeah.
and Ronaldo's play styles very easily. And you would think almost like just because you're watching someone play a game, it's not actually them. You can't really tell, but you can definitely tell a difference between a certain player's play style. Like, for example, in Smash, like if I can tell the difference between Dark Wizzy's Mario and Prodigy's Mario. And like you can tell the difference. It takes a bit to see it, but like that's what's something that's so cool. And people don't even realize that is like people's characters almost an extension of themselves, and they express themselves in that way. And I think that's really awesome. But you gotta like know the game a little bit to kind of pick up on that, but still.
But I don't want to go too far down the Smash esports rabbit hole because I could. And I know me and Matthew definitely could. But yeah, that's a really good point. I think that the ability to see that difference in play style.
The reason we're talking about this is because, well, we currently live in a society where sports, for the first time in our lives, have not been airing 24/7. Like, I talked about this in the last episode. Like, at this point, I would go, like, watch baseball or golf if it was on. But it's just, like, there's nothing on. And esports has really boomed in popularity really over the past few years, but I'd say even, like, on a very micro scale, like the past 2 months, Steam has seen their peak concurrent player count go from 19 million to 23 million peak concurrent player count just in a few short weeks. ESPN is hosting an all esports day on Sunday, which I heard about literally a few hours ago because, well, they're showing the Rocket League World Championships on ESPN2. Like, we've had esports on ESPN, I guess. They had a FIFA tournament that they showed on there. But this is like, they're really, like, esports, it's the only competition that's on. And it's crazy to see that when all other sports are gone due to a horrific pandemic that's impacting lots of people, how video games and esports, namely, have completely taken the culture by storm.
Like, video games have always brought people together, but I'd say that they're proving right now that how they can bring like people together in ways not seen before. Because like you literally can't go, well, you shouldn't be going and see people. And the only way you can contact people is like obviously FaceTime and phone calls, but even then you're not doing something. But like you can do something and still talk through video games. And like that's such like a unique thing to our time right now. It's like the only thing I can think of really where you can still be like actively doing something with someone and bond over something and talk at the same time, you know?
And not actually be like together in person.
Exactly.
I think what's kind of crazy right now, especially, I was just thinking Animal Crossing came out at the actual best time possible. I was just thinking about that. Like, you could not have a
Facts.
better time for Animal Crossing to come out. I mean, part of that is just it's kind of an extension of the fact that I don't think I can go a singular day without seeing something Animal Crossing related on any kind of social media, whether it's Twitter, Reddit, Instagram. I see something all the time.
It's actually
And
true.
it's kind of a just a testament, yes, to how just during this quarantine, video games are one of the big things that you can do. Really, one of the main things you can do, other than just I don't know, for us college students, do college work.
Netflix. I mean, that's it.
Netflix. You watch all of Netflix though. They're trying to crank out stuff. I mean, Tiger King saw a lot of viewings because of how it came out during this quarantine, so everyone's been watching it. At this point, a lot of people are consuming all the content they want off of Netflix because it's a set library that changes every what I don't know how often they change it, but it's not like a daily thing or even a weekly thing. People are going to go through it. So like video games are one of the besides schoolwork, Netflix, and like watching movies and a few other like miscellaneous things. It's one of the few options you have right now. If you literally can't leave your house.
I'm trying to find the statistic right now, but this is on the same strain of like once you've watched all of Netflix, like what is there to do? There was some crazy number that happened this week, and I think it was like how much the box office made in the month of March, and it's ridiculous.
I honestly feel bad for a lot of movie theaters. There have been a lot of stuff coming out about like movie theaters are trying to hold on to they're clinging to life.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of really sad. If this thing goes on for a while, we could see a lot of movie theaters going out of business. Probably before airlines start going bankrupt. But I mean, airlines aren't doing too hot either. But
No.
I don't really want to make it all about the movie theater, but
coronavirus.
yeah.
Coronavirus.
Yeah, if you want to hear more about like what's going on, go watch our last podcast.
Put in the plug.
Yeah. It's 2 in a row, baby. Can we get 3?
Can we get 3? Yeah. Yeah, I'll get one eventually.
We might get 3. We might.
Y'all both got one. I'll get one. Don't worry.
Hey, you got us. At the end of the podcast, if we don't bring it up, just say it at the end. Just start plugging it. All right. That's the deal.
Yeah.
Esports viewership, specifically over the past like 2 years, I'd say we don't have exact numbers for 2019 yet, just because, well, the coronavirus has kind of put a damper on all the people compiling the stats. But we do know that in 2 years, esports global total viewership went from 270 million total viewers in 2016 to 411 million total viewers in 2018. And it's expected to overtake the NFL in viewership by next year. If it keeps growing at this rate, it will overtake the NFL.
League of Legends had over 100 million views, more than the Super Bowl, the biggest sporting event. Like both of the biggest sporting events for respectively for League and Super Bowl League beat it out, and that wasn't even close. So that just like shows the growth in viewership. It's insane.
I felt like, especially the Super Bowl, has just felt less and less relevant every year. I don't know if you guys have felt that. I mean, I like obviously it's like a big event, right? But and it still always brings in a lot of numbers. But I can't help but feel that every year it's just like, I don't know. Like I feel like the most relevant it's ever been is when people tried to get Sweet Victory to play at the Super Bowl, and they didn't even do it right.
I think this. I mean, the Super Bowl's it's still very relevant. It's
Right.
not even like maybe in a little bit it's dropped, but it's a huge deal still. And obviously, it brings in more money and stuff than League of Legends does. But like, it just the fact that League of Legends competes with that is insane.
Right. League, they benefit a lot from Korea.
Oh, for sure.
Viewership in Korea and also in China actually. The game's really big between China, Korea, and the United States. It's not as big in Europe, but it's still got a big it's still a large fan base there. But honestly, the esport of Europe is I think we can pretty much just safely say it's CS:GO. Um, it's probably where Europe's probably the highest tier, and there's the most tournaments for things in Europe for CS:GO. Like if you're going to say anything's a European esport, CS:GO is the closest thing to it.
Especially if you're
Not to
talking like Eastern. Like the further east you go, like the more and more like I'm talking like in Denmark and Poland and in
Oh
Russia.
yeah,
Like the further east you go, like McDonald's did a sponsorship or a while
the
back.
McNip,
They had the McNip, yeah, for one of the Swedish CS:GO teams.
yep, NIP, Ninjas in Pajamas.
The best CS:GO team in the world currently, Astralis. They had a thing with McDonald's too. I think Navi has had something
Are they
too.
gonna?
I don't know.
They won just recently. They might get one.
They might.
Will we get the McNavi? Only time will
The
tell.
McNavi.
We've talked about esports. We've talked about how it's risen, but the problem is like, well, you said like you correctly brought up the point that like League of Legends competes actively with the Super Bowl, right? Like as far as viewership goes, but at the same time, like you wouldn't like if you walked up to like somebody and asked them like what do you think had higher viewership this year, like League of Legends World Championship or the Super Bowl? Not like people who are like what who you consider like esports enthusiasts, like just like regular people off the street. They'd probably still say the Super Bowl or like the World Cup for soccer. What separate, because the problem is that like esports has these crazy numbers, but at the same time like it has like a different like standing in society. Like, do you think that's because like people just don't consider like esports to be real sports, or do you think that it's just because like people are like, oh, those darn kids in their video games, like kind of the get off my lawn mentality? I don't know.
I would say part of it is it's not indoctrinated into our culture yet. Like, think about something like the NFL or baseball, all or like soccer across like in England or something. Like, it's a part of the culture. And I don't think esports has had enough time to really become a part of the culture because it'll start becoming more part of the culture once our generation is getting older and it's just more people are aware of it. Because like right now, I feel like there's lots of people about it, but either it's people passionate about esports or just like don't care at all. There's no real in between. Like you can have somebody who like is slightly interested in football and is like aware of it but not passionate about it, but you don't really get that with esports. It's one or the other, I feel like. I mean, maybe I'm wrong on that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that's the case.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. That was actually what I was basically. I was gonna say the same thing. The whole idea
Sure
of
you were good.
yeah, I was actually that was the plan. Uh, literally, like people just. It's not like oh they think the Super Bowl has more viewerships because Super Bowl is a bigger event. People just don't know about like the people you'd be like either you know about esports or you do not, kind of,
Mhm.
or at least about how big it is. Most people know what it is at this point. They just no one really knows about esports. And I think the other thing you're right. It is. I think it's just the age range. It'll come with time because I think right now the oldest I've seen anyone like the oldest age range that people are really into esports is like late 20s, early 30s. So not quite there yet, but like we're getting there.
Well, like I remember like when Garrett and I went to DreamHack Atlanta this last year. Like I remember we saw like I expected it to be like people our age. Like 18 to 22-year-olds, like mostly male. Like like I expected it to be like that kind of a group. Like all of us be like super close in age cuz realistically like who goes to a 3-day like video game technology like expo like that. But I remember I was really surprised at just like we saw a surprising amount of like families, which was weird. Like we saw a lot of like really young kids, like stroller age, and also like a surprising amount of people like in their who I would assume would be in like their 50s or 60s. I feel like we're starting to see just a little bit of that like what you're talking about how like my dad grew up watching football, but like I think we're starting to get to the age where people who like really grew up watching esports are starting to like build families and take their families to events that they went to.
People become fans of games just because they played them, even if they didn't play them in their childhood or something. Like you pick up a new game, you really enjoy it, even if you just play it for fun on the side. You're not very good. You see that there's a pro scene, you find it pretty interesting. Like a lot of people will start watching a pro scene of a game. They just like it. They're not good. They don't play it all the time, but they keep up with the pro scene nonetheless.
Yeah, I'm looking at this thing off the esportsobserver.com. It's talking about the esports viewer profile, and it's saying that like other people like they talk to, they said like people watch esports for games they don't even play. Like 44% of the people watch League, 36 Counter Strike, 34 Smash Melee. I mean, it's I think that a lot of people get into esports because of a specific game, but then they start like looking at other sport like esports like that they haven't even played. Like I've never even played CS:GO, but I'll watch it sometimes. Also, this is random, but like I feel like one cool thing about esports that is like kind of separate from real sports is like you can like watch a game of like an esport game and then go do the same exact thing almost. Like go play that game on the same map and try to do exactly what they did. And like while you can kind of do that with like sports, like obviously you can go out and play pickup, like almost next level, like how close you can get to doing what the pros do in
You can
esports. I
actually
think is really
recreate
cool.
exact scenarios.
Exactly. Like
Um,
you can feel much more like a pro than you can in a like in a traditional sport.
right. You can actually look at what a pro player does on, like, say for CS:GO is a good example. You can watch this pro player perform a smoke, check some angles, and maybe hit one shot. You can do that exact same thing, um, and like you can just look at that and say, okay, I'm gonna practice these smokes, and you can be able to do the same thing per se. But you can basically you can use. It's very easy to see what pro players do and immediately be able to put it into practice, not saying like, oh well, um I don't know, like I don't have the opportunities, or I don't have the like it's really easy to pick up and try to learn those things that the pro players are doing.
Another thing that I'd argue, almost the exact opposite of that, is like watching a CS:GO game, and like you watch somebody. So like you watch the famous Coldzera play. I think it's Coldzera. It's the game against Liquid where the Brazilian player jumps up on the van at Mirage and gets like basically four of the most insane like jumping op shots that I've ever seen in my entire life. And like the fact of like you were saying, like the ability to be able to go and try to reproduce it is so prevalent in video games. But like also like when you try to go do some stuff, you realize like that was just like a magical moment. Like trying to recreate like a jumping op shot that kills like two people with one bullet or whatever, or trying to recreate a ceiling shot in Rocket League. Like I feel like everybody. I think that's one of the things that's holding esports back slightly is that everybody looks and they're like, oh, like that doesn't look that hard, and like people are just overhyping it. Like the casters and analysts are overhyping it. But when you really try to go do it, like if you really like try to pick up a controller and play Rocket League for the first time, you realize that what these people are doing, like how they're like flying all around the map, and how these CS:GO players are like perfectly moving and positioning themselves to be able to cut off angles, it's just like the amount of skill you recognize once you try to do it. Like, I think that's what's kept me coming back to CSGO. It's like watching a pro tournament, seeing somebody hit a crazy shot, and then thinking like, oh, I bet I can do that, and then just instantly tanking my rank because I can't.
I totally agree that like the big you can't like replicate the big moments, but more what I'm saying is like I can watch somebody play Warwick in League and be like, dang, that dude was like sick with Warwick. And then I can go play Warwick. And will I be as good? No. But I can't watch Messi and then go literally be Messi. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the difference. Is like you can go and like almost like replicate their game more than you can with a regular sport, which is I think that's cool. Like you can like the amount of times I've watched a pro Smash game and then was inspired and went and get like try to play a character, and then I ended up being terrible. I mean, it didn't work well, but you have like an inspiration in a sense, which is kind of cool.
Right, and what you can do is you can try to learn. Really, what I was saying is like you can learn, like you can watch like a pro game and get an idea of what like you can actually like learn some of the more like crazy stuff. It's those plays, like those things that you just like the cold Zera play with the AWP. You can't replicate that. That's just called experience, skill, and just game sense. Some stuff that just it takes practicing the game a lot. That's the kind of stuff that you can't just pick up. And that's what's incredible to see in esports. Like you can learn all the technical stuff. That's what's really cool. You can learn all the technical stuff really easy off of watching all that stuff. Well, quote unquote, really easy, but you know what I'm saying? Easier than like game sense.
Yeah.
And then you can try, and then from there you can try. It's like you can try to make those kind of plays by like playing the game and getting as good as them. But and that's where the difficulty like comes in to learning those games. But it's definitely really crazy that you can still, especially for a game like CS:GO, that you still see crazy plays that are like, okay, I've never seen that before. That's insane. In 2020, when the game's been out for 2 decades now, just about, or a little bit over 2 decades actually. Because man, that shot simple hit in the tournament that Navi won. Sorry, I don't keep up with CS:GO esports as much anymore, but I did see this on my Twitter feed. The old jumping scout no scope headshot wall bang. Glorious. Glorious.
That was the most MLG thing I think you've ever said.
It's literally like, but it is though. Like that.
Holy crap! It's a jumping no scope wall bang a headshot. Oh my!
The amount of things he did that were cool in one. If he had done one of those things, it still would have been cool.
It's sick,
right? But he did like 6 of them in the same play. Not to mention he never saw the guy. He was going off footsteps, and that's what was insanity.
And what's cool though? Oh my goodness!
We might cut that one out. We might.
What I meant was what's cool though.
What I meant was
what I meant. No, what's cool is like I know I keep comparing to like other like to traditional sports, but it's true. Like I don't appreciate baseball as much as someone who's played baseball their whole life. But like what's fun about esports is the same thing. Like the more you play the game yourself, the more you start to like appreciate the finer things like Garrett was talking about. And then like it just becomes so much more interesting, and then you're completely like hooked in.
Before we go on, this episode of the podcast is sponsored by Anchor. When we started our podcast, we were paying a monthly subscription to host our audio on the internet. And because we're broke college kids, that was not ideal for us because, well, we've got to eat somehow. However, then we learned about Anchor and we were instantly blown away. Making a brand new podcast or transferring an existing podcast to Anchor might be the easiest thing that I've ever done, and let me explain why. First of all, it's completely free. You can upload all of your content there and Anchor will host it for you. Secondly, Anchor has a really good system that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. You can literally create your podcast from wherever you are. One of our problems with our monthly subscription was that we were having trouble distributing our podcast to multiple spaces, but Anchor will actually distribute your podcast for you so that it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so many more. Plus, Anchor's sponsorship things make it really easy to make money from your podcast even if you have a very small listener base. It's legitimately everything that you could need to make a podcast and to grow your audience in one place. If you're looking to start a new podcast or transfer your existing podcast over to another platform that's free, Anchor really is a no-brainer. So, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started podcasting now. Now, back to your regularly scheduled episode.
I don't know. I feel like the barrier to entry can be pretty low as far as like trying to getting into some of these games because they're free. Like League, it's not only free, you can run it on literally anything, and you can try to you can actually start to learn the game a little bit, enough to even just enjoy the esports. Barrier into entry, at least as far as not only understanding, but also as far as actually trying to play the game, can be pretty low for games like League and stuff like that.
Well, I think that's one of the things where CS:GO and really esports, just in like entry. If we're talking like true entry level of like esports, it's just like watching esports in general. But like when you really think about it, like one of esports' benefit almost has been because, well, you can watch all of their stuff for free. Like Twitch has become like a global hub for watching like esports matches, and sure, like they haven't made it to like mainstream like TV channels until really like recently. Like the fact that you can just like pop on a website from anywhere and just like, even if it's not your game, just to notice that it's on and watch a little bit of it, like that's the viewership numbers. I think that's one of the things, because like as we shift from like cable TV more to like stuff like YouTube TV or like streaming TV services, one of the things that like frustrated me was like when we had DirecTV, like if I wanted to watch a specific Real Madrid soccer game, like oftentimes like I would have to own a different channel, or I'd have to pay like a monthly fee to get that game. I know they have something like that for like the NHL and the NFL and soccer, and like it's just like I feel like that low barrier of entry of just being able to log on to twitch.tv even anonymously and just see like this is on. Like there have been games that I've watched like esports tournaments for in the past, like just a little bit of, but it's just because like I was bored and I just looked over and, oh, there's like this major tournament for this game, and so I watched a little bit of it. Not much, probably less than an hour, but still cool that like Twitch is almost becoming like a TV network for esports, but also retaining like its like the creative stuff that keeps it like flowing with creators like Tim the Tatman, and I would say Ninja, but he left for Mixer. You get the idea. Like it's a great platform for like broadcasting tournaments, but also for like the average Joe just to stream their gameplay.
Yeah, I think what you talking about, the barrier to entry to watch that, yeah, that's a really big deal. That just anyone can just say, hey, I'm going to watch some esports. Don't have to pay a single thing. Just get on my computer, watch some esports. And really any esport that's on. So that's really cool. And that's something it's something you don't really think about sometimes. Because not all sports are on cable.
Like how would we were talking about earlier how like it's harder for like I guess older people to grasp the concept of esports just because it's a little bit foreign to really like other sports. Like you never would have thought, like even like probably 10 years ago, that you could make a career off of being really good at a video game. I guess like if somebody like came up to you and like told you that like you couldn't consider a video game a sport, like how would you like show what kind of comparisons like do you see to like, we talked about it a little bit already, but like sports like football and basketball, baseball, just really any major sports, like what is the like how does esports like compare to that, whether it's like training or like competition wise? Like how would you explain to really a boomer, like how would you explain esports to them and like why it should be considered a sport?
I think the main two things to take into consideration, I guess, are both like like say football and like an esport require um, mechanical skill or physical training in the case of football, and they take like mental skill and like knowledge of the sport and how it works to be good at it, to be truly good. You have to not only understand the game, but you also have to have like the mechanical skill there or physical prowess in the case of like football. So yeah, that's I think the main thing, that it requires like two levels of understanding and skill, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
I would say that like on multiple levels. First off, structurally, esports are very similar in just like their leagues and management. Um, Most of that is because esports have been modeling themselves after regular sports, but the league systems for a lot of the esports are very familiar to normal sports. Fans are just as passionate. There's rivalries. It's a story. It's not just people playing video games. Also, I'd say on more like the sports side, you can't. It's hard to make the argument um, if you're defining physical activity as football, like going at it hard, like body on body, like stuff like that. But the case can be made for just the sheer like the amount of movements on a keyboard per minute. It's insane. Um like a German professor at the German Sports University in Cologne. He like did a study, like the first study on esports athletes, and said that like the average esports athlete achieves up to 400 movements on a keyboard per minute. Like that's insane. Like that's he said he's yeah, he said he's like never observed that in any other sport, like not even table tennis players who are like known for their incredible hand-eye coordination. And so just because like esport players may not be like swimming or jumping hurdles and stuff, they have their own physical specialties that separate them from traditional sports in ways that other sports may not have. So just because it's not necessarily cardio doesn't mean it's not a sport, you know?
Like just because you're not tired, like out of breath from like running like down the field to catch a football doesn't mean that you're not like producing like a different kind of work almost, I guess.
Really a mentality. Like it just depends what you define as physical um exertion, but just because your definition may be different doesn't mean that it's the right definition. And um people are like more and more starting to accept it as a traditional sport, or not as a sport and not just like its own subsect, you know?
What do y'all think is holding like esports back? Like I might have already asked this question in a different way, but like I was just thinking about like viewership numbers and how like oh, ESPN's putting like esports on TV for the first time, really, in well, really the first time they've ever done this, just because they have to be losing money, just because there's no sports on. I don't know. I'm just curious, like, because like we've experienced the growth of esports firsthand. We've all three of us have really like been following esports pretty closely. Just as like the years have gone on, we've really seen the growth in like tournament prize pools and like just normal community knowledge. I guess my question is like what's the next step? Like what does esports need to do next to become like a household thing? It already kind of is a household thing, but like where does esports need to what does esports need to do? Like to continue like moving forward.
it depends on the game, honestly. As far as like what's holding them back. As far as like league's concerned, I don't think there's very much holding league back. Besides maybe um, I don't really know. League is it, it's been growing for a long time, and it airs on TV as well. Um, However, it's just the thing is it's never needed. It hasn't needed to run on TV, and honestly, it could go the rest of time without ever airing on like big TV. But the thing is that eventually someone's gonna be like, this is good money. We need view. We want it'd be good to have viewers. We'll move it on TV. But also, the thing is, TV's kind of dying out anyway. In general, it's moving all to streaming services, paying a subscription to just watch all your stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if we'll ever see cable league. But the thing is that I don't think there needs to be that. As far as something like
Agreed.
CS:GO, the thing that holds it back is the premise of the game being counter-terrorists versus terrorists, as far as marketing purposes. However, for many that doesn't matter, and honestly, that's just what it is for CS. Sadly, because the depth is there. It's just I don't know. A lot of advertisers are, and people are hesitant, company-wise, to jump onto it. If you know what I mean. In some scenarios, but
Definitely.
but yeah, I mean, people are definitely coming around to it. It's been growing
To,
a lot, so
to kind of
uh,
jump off, oh no, sorry,
no, you can go ahead. I was pretty much done.
just to kind of jump on what you're saying, I think there's two things holding back esports. One, like Garrett was saying, a lot of games can have a difficult barrier of entry to understand what's happening, especially for an older crowd. Someone jumping into a league game or Overwatch, it can be hard to understand what's happening. Whereas the premise of a sport like soccer is very simple. Just put the ball in the goal. So it can be hard to understand at a certain level. And I think that lots of bigger companies, bigger brands that could market it are a little hesitant at this level because no one's really gone completely all in. No one who is outside of esports already has gone completely in, at least that I know of, enough to start kind of a movement of making it mainstream. Because once esports breaks that barrier of being mainstream and being seen in social media, not because you're following an esports account, but because your sports account that you followed posted, oh, here's what happened on esports today. That's when it's going to really start, I think, at least. That's when it's going to start really becoming mainstream, is once people really start getting on board with it and just going all in.
Yeah, I would agree. Because I mean, you see companies invest in it, but it's not like oh, hey guys, this is esports. It's more of hey, we're gonna put in some money in. We want to help you guys, but it's not like a publicity thing, you know?
Yep.
It's just more we're gonna fund another team. So the people already there who enjoy it are gonna get another team. It's gonna be great, but it doesn't forward. You know what I'm saying? It's good. It keeps the scene moving more alive. It's good, but I mean, it doesn't. There just need honestly, it just takes one big step and it'll happen. Honestly, I could see it happening anytime within the next year, easily.
Mm.
To bump,
Especially given our
bump it
current
up.
scenario.
Right. I could see it happening in the next month or two.
Yeah.
Just bumping up to that status. Because it'll be one of those things that you see, and one day you don't see it's not as big, and then the next day it is. You know, it'll
Facts.
feel like it's kind of exploded when yeah. I think this is a very unique time that might just be the push it needs as far as ESPN putting stuff on there, just getting a lot of publicity out there to mainstream outlets.
We talked about this in the last one, but iRacing being aired on Fox, and having what was it, 1 million viewers or something like that.
Currently,
What
the
was on
most
Fox?
viewed esport, minus league championships and stuff like that, but most viewed esport, just standard game. It's
Wait, what
getting
was this? Which game?
so Fox has been actually continuing their NASCAR league in iRacing, a sim racing game, which
No
sim
way.
racers tend to be they're exact copies of actual driving, actually driving a car. Especially in iRacing's case, they really painstakingly recreate the vehicles. But a lot
That's crazy.
basically they're airing like fully virtual NASCAR races now, and they're continuing the season on
Bruh.
through iRacing. And what's incredible is that actually all the NASCAR drivers are like they're onto it. Like the races are apparently 90% NASCAR drivers, 10% already existing iRacing drivers, and viewership has exploded. In fact, they've seen a viewership increase with people who never actually watched NASCAR before watching it because it's now iRacing. So it's kind of
That's so
incredible.
cool.
It's
That's
kind
really
of seen
cool.
a huge increase, and now they first started it as like a side event, but it got so popular that they're now airing it on Fox, Fox 2, I believe, Fox Sports 2, which is
Hey,
what.
I mean, what else do they have to broadcast? I mean, why not?
That's true. I think I really think that like it's really been going big, and all the NASCAR like fan base has been really like approving of that.
Hmm.
So because really I actually saw Clint Boyer, a known NASCAR driver. He actually started talking. He talked about kind of in a video on Fox Sports like why this works so well because of just, and he talked about like and he had a whole thing talking about how sim racing is legitimately accurate, and not only that, it requires the same skill set as actual NASCAR, and that's why it's so
Mhm.
good for this. Because in a car and that like, and when you're actually driving NASCAR, you're using a wheel, and then you got your pedals, your gas, your brake, your clutch. All of that is present in sim racing, the exact same things.
Hmm.
So I mean, it translates over perfectly. So yeah, I could see, you could see sim racing kind of booming, and I mentioned this in my other thing. What would be super cool is if iRacing and sim racing, that they had like it became like a tier two to like NASCAR and other racing series. Because as a
Yeah.
driver, it's a lot to kind of work through. You have to kind of work your way up through tiers of racing to even get up to be able to drive for the big teams, like company teams and stuff like that, and like
Sure.
GT and NASCAR and Formula One. But it would be a very cool like tier two, tier three way, like uh, to get into those sports, um, like motorsports, I guess, which is kind of incredible. Um, uh, it'd be a really crazy way to it's probably, it would be the easiest way. It would bring a lot of people into motorsports that were not previously into it, because
Yeah.
it'd be so easy if you said, "Hey, I want to try, race driving." I mean, it's the cheapest way to get into it because yes, wheels are in like the gear. It is expensive to get, even at entry level. Like it's like a few $100s. Thing is that that's nothing compared to like how much it would cost to enter a league and stuff like that,
Oh
and
my
actually
gosh.
get your
Yeah.
own stuff. And racing recreationally, even most of the time they make you do it with your own car, which you can damage, by the way, if you don't know your stuff. Um, and it's kind of a monetary risk-free way to get into motorsports if you're really dying to get into it. And I could see it being a really good thing for like bringing new talent into the motorsports scene, which is what I was talking about kind of within last podcast a bit. But I think it's really crazy, and honestly, it'd be crazy to see it as like an esport, almost as a tier two or tier three version of an actual sport.
That'd be
Um,
crazy. Like
but
actually.
I'm curious to see if that ends up happening after this, especially because I know a lot of other racing series have started to try to do that now, um, with how well it's worked out for NASCAR.
I think it's also super interesting, just from the sense that like I don't know, but I always I generally like when I think of somebody who's like, video games aren't sports, like I legitimately think of like a true diehard NASCAR fan. Like somebody who's like, video games don't have nothing on these people that like these super talented NASCAR races. But to see them find to see like that community that like would say like, you should watch a real sport like NASCAR, suddenly be like, oh, like this is an like if this is an esport, like I could watch this. And the fact that like it's in NASCAR, like crashes are scary because like crashes are like you could get seriously hurt or killed. like on that last turn of Talladega or whatever. Like you could get seriously hurt. Esports, like if you do it simulated, like it's almost humorous. Like because nobody's hurt, like nobody's actually like in pain. Like just like I don't know, seeing like somebody put I think it was Slasher on Twitter put like the video of like some cars spinning out, and he was like, the point was like it was just comical, because like nobody's hurt, nobody's like.
And also the other thing is that it doesn't like there's no it helps out people in this race teams in the sense that if they can provide the same level of entertainment and if they get in a crash, they don't have to pay thousands of dollars to repair their car.
Facts.
And not only that, they're out of the race. It's like a double whammy, right? They're DNF and their car's wrecked, and they gotta fix it all. And it's like multiple hundreds of $1,000 car that you have to now repair or total and like start from the ground up again. And in this, you crash. It's like, oh, we're out of the race. Dang, that really sucks. We don't get the money, but we can always try again next time without doesn't cost us really anything, actually.
Better luck next time.
Yeah. Actually, it's more like that, and not more like, well, we might not race the rest of this season. Like,
well,
because we
our
wrecked it.
livelihood might be ruined.
Like, in like lower tier racing, that's kind of how it works. You wreck your car,
Oh, for sure.
you're kind of done. Like, unless
No,
someone decides
you could
to
be.
buy you a new
No,
one.
you could. Well, you could literally be done, like actually dead, or
Yeah,
you
that's
could
true.
be a generational talent, have your car wrecked out. You don't have money. You're screwed.
Yeah, you better hope someone picks you up who, like a company team, that they have infinite resources to pool into the team, basically.
Infinite resources.
Yeah, like, I don't know. It's just, I feel
Unlimited.
like this is going to be very, very interesting for motorsports. I don't think it will change, like, it will replace, like, the actual thing, but I could definitely see it being, like I said, a tier 2 or tier 3 level type of thing.
Yeah.
Tier 3 most likely, but that would still be incredible. And lowers the barrier to entry, at least for drivers, significant.
Wasn't there a thing a while back where they put like an iRacing champion and an F1 champion on like a very similar track, and the iRacing champion won? Like they were both in like, it was like they were both on a real track and they both had real cars, but because like the simulated racing was so accurate in like how you control the car, the iRacing like person like was already prepared to like go out onto this track, and I think he like won the race or something like that.
That's
Straight up,
crazy.
sim racing it's incredible compared to like other simulation stuff. It's just it is exact in a lot of cases, especially if like the people who make those sim races, especially iRacing is not like oh, you pay for it and you get it. It's a subscription based service, and they actually recreate these cars and uh, pretty much like in the tracks very like painstakingly. And I don't know. It's one of those things that it's kind of like if you're really good at iRacing, as in you win iRacing championships on the regular, like it's not, oh, you're just good at iRacing. No, you're good at driving and racing, because it truly has all the factors, like all the things you would have to worry about in a race are in iRacing, from the most basic of I'm turning my car or slowing down and speeding up at the right times, to the heat of your tires and maintenance required for your car, because you might not have an actual pit crew, but you have a virtual one that if you don't pull in, if you're not aware of what's happening to your car, you're still going to have problems. And
Yeah.
it's as true of a recreation as you can get without actually driving on the track. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see where that goes, because that's a very unique situation, at least, where esports will become like, it might become a not like it will become like a stepping stone, or like a separate like league within like an already existing sport. So yeah, it's definitely really cool. Um, what might be happening with that, especially with how it's booming. But yeah,
The fact of like no other sports being on also has given it like really the push that it needed. Because like I had heard of sim racing from you, Garrett, but like I hadn't really been like, oh, like I got to turn on my TV to watch the sim racing race today. Like I would have never done that. But like it's really given it such a great push like in the right direction to iRacing, to really just sim racing in general. Like that community's starting to get like recognized almost.
right. Because sim racing, I feel like sim racing's always been like it's like a hobby for most people who do it. It's like, oh, it's a thing. Like people are into it. If I don't know, it's kind of also the side. Like there wasn't a ton of overlap between motorsports and sim racing, other than like people who do sim racing. They tend to be really big fans of motorsports. But if you're a really big fan of motorsports, it's not vice versa. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like there was not really much of an overlap there. But you're starting to see now, I guess maybe like the communities more merge more in the sense that like people who follow motorsports are gonna be like, oh, sim racing, that's kind of cool. Like especially if players that they know already are racing in sim racing, like they're probably still gonna watch it. You know, it's that kind of stuff. That's I don't know. It's really interesting, and nothing's really developed, I guess, since like we recorded the coronavirus podcast less than a week ago. Wow, insanity.
By the
Big tech
way,
guys.
if you haven't checked that podcast
There it
out,
is.
last podcast out, coronavirus, check it out. John and Garrett talk all about coronavirus, COVID-19, just things around that. Just check it out. If you haven't already been blessed by that experience, go ahead, do that right now. What are you doing? Get off this call. Stop listening to my voice. Listen to John and Garrett's
Yep.
voice.
Get off the podcast right now. Disconnect right now. You need to go watch the. But
Well,
anyway,
ironic that you said that because I think we're kind of wrapping it up. Just in general,
it's wild.
I didn't want Garrett to talk about iRacing for another 20 minutes, so I think it's best if we end this.
So
we end
guys,
this
hear me out
podcast
right. Here's what's gonna save the world: simulation racing. What if
Yeah.
we
So
had a
far,
tier 2 racing system?
in 2 podcast episodes, I have now talked about iRacing probably for a total of like 40 minutes now. If you combine the coronavirus one and this one, you can probably make another podcast, which is just me talking
Dude.
about iRacing.
Screw it. The next one's gonna be on iRacing.
Like this podcast if you want to hear sim racing ASMR.
I will say I'm proud of
Hey,
this.
guys.
This is the first time I think ever that we've done 2 podcasts in the same week.
It's
We're
crazy.
It is crazy. Like we had a podcast come out this week and we're recording another one right now. Insanity. It's not an entire month in between podcasts.
Dude, we
Next
did one in
level.
like the last one before the coronavirus was in December.
Wait, was it really?
Yeah, we did the Star Wars one,
Oh man.
and then we did
Oh, man.
coronavirus.
Didn't y'all start this in like
August.
August? Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
I remember listening to it.
This is
and
like
I
our
was like-
6th or 7th episode.
7th episode.
Hey, we're starting to get quite the library.
Yeah, we have a whole library. Which, speaking of which, if you're in the coronavirus pandemic, you have nothing to do. You've watched all of Netflix. You've played all your video games. Go listen to our extensive backlog of like 8 hours of us talking about nerd stuff.
Please listen to all of the rest of our podcasts.
Please.
Especially you, Michael Bublé. Especially you. All you're doing is recording music over there. You have to do other things. There is more to do than
There's more to life.
recording. Yeah, go watch our podcast. Very specifically, watch the Big Tech Guys every episode, and then send me an album to confirm that you have listened to all our podcasts. All right.
Yeah, just watch like Michael Bublé steal like all of our podcasts and just upload it to his own private website, and then we're just like, well, frick.
I'll take it honestly, because then he will have seen the podcast and will have got my wish since episode 1.
Yeah,
Episode 1, when I call that, we are on episode 7. How many episodes will it take for Michael Bublé to take notice of our podcast?
I don't know, at least 7.
At least 7, right? I hope it stops at 7, because I hope I get a message within the hour. So
You'll
I
have like a
think we
fancy
wrapped
sign
up
off thing you say.
It's us sloppily ending the podcast for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's the consistent ending we've had to every podcast, is that it's a bad ending and we try to end it 5 times and just don't, and then this for forever, and it just never ends, and it's really awkward and bad. But we do it
All right,
every
guys. Well, check out our Patreon. Be one of our faithful
we don't
BTG
do we have
fans.
it? Do we have a Patreon?
Yes,
We don't have a
with
Patreon
thousands
yet.
of people on it, Garrett.
Not yet,
Like,
yes.
Well, we might not have a Patreon, but we do have this magical thing called Anchor. And on Anchor, you can actually support our podcast either monetarily, or you can actually send in a voice message where you can send us a question, a tech question, and we'll try to answer it. I'd like to get to the point where like we read like we answer a question at the beginning of every podcast or something like that. But if you'd like to support the podcast monetarily, because we're broke college kids, and we need money, you can go to our Anchor page. I'll have it. Well, if you're not already listening to it on Anchor, you just go to anchor.fm/bigtechguys, and then at the very top, you should also have links to basically everywhere else the podcast is available. YouTube, it's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere. If you're on a regular platform, don't forget to either share with your friends or leave a review. If you're on YouTube, like it, comment what you thought was the most interesting thing Garrett said about iRacing in this episode. Yeah, share it with your friends if you enjoy it. That's really all I got. Well, hopefully, I hope we can get into a rhythm making podcasts and like actually put out a few during this quarantine period. Because like, what else do we have to do? School?
No,
Yeah.
not school.
School?
Definitely just podcast recording.
Yeah.
That's it.
my life.
We've actually recorded this one back to back with the last one. So we ended the last podcast, and then we immediately we drank some water and we immediately called Kurlak. So it's currently 4 a.m.
Yeah, that is how I managed to
prank.
talk about the exact same things and with iRacing, because I said it literally an hour ago. So, yeah, there we go. Also, remember when we were supposed to end this podcast? Yeah,
Yeah, we should probably end the
Remember
podcast.
we did the exact same thing that we always do. Yeah, that's what we're doing right now.
All right,
So,
Garrett, end it.
probably end this.
Give a catchphrase, Garrett. Say the thing. Say the thing, Martin.
Say the line, Bart.
We out. End the call. Send a tweet.
All right, that's
Please?
it. That's it, guys. See y'all in the next one, either a month from now or next week. Peace.